So let's get into chapter 4, social cognition. Okay, so the field of social cognition involves the study of how people think about the social world and arrive at judgments that help them interpret the past, understand the present, and predict the future. So this is based off of your previous experiences. How do I know how to act in a similar or the same social situation in the future? So there's some information needed for social cognition. So how quickly do we form impressions of complete strangers based on physical appearances? Why do we make snap judgments of people we don't even know? You walk by people in the store or on the street or whatever, and you automatically make assumptions about them or impressions of them, even though we don't know them at all. Why do we do that? There's two dimensions people see when they look at a face. One is the positive negative dimension, and this is whether someone is seen as trustworthy or untrustworthy. And then there's the power dimension. This is whether someone is aggressive or not. And the reason that we see people in these ways is to determine their safeness. We are always looking out for our safety and our survival. And so it's important to get at least a judgment of the people that we come across, the people we're in the same room as, the people where we walk by, to see if they're of any danger to us. So how can judging the way someone looks aid in survival? There's looks of danger and there's looks of cuteness. When something or someone looks dangerous, then we're on guard. But if something looks cute, then we are relaxed. We're not worried about it, because the likelihood of us being in more danger when something or someone looks dangerous is greater. So here we've got the kind of an axis, a table, a graph of the two dimensions I just mentioned, the positive, negative, and the power dimension. So here we have trustworthiness, which is the positive, negative dimension. So we have people that look the least trustworthy to people who look the most trustworthy. And then we have the dominance dimension, which is the aggression dimension. And so down here would be the lowest amount of aggression, and up here would be the highest amount of aggression. That's not saying that people that look like this are necessarily aggressive, but they look aggressive. So if we're looking for someone that is safe, that we think is a safe person to go to, say you're in trouble and you don't know anyone, and you're trying to look for someone that you think you can trust, that can help you out, you're probably going to be looking in this direction right around here. People that look like this, you kind of have the lower cheekbones, the softer face, the bigger eyes. Where here you have, right around here, you have a very angular jaw. You've got strong eyebrows, kind of smaller eyes, a more angular face, because that is deemed to be more aggressive. So we have the least aggressive, most trustworthy people. And then over here, we have the most aggressive, least trustworthy people. Are these the kind of people, the people that look like this, are these the people that you're going to run to and ask for help? Or is it going to be more like these people? So that's what the dimensions we see when we look at a face. It's a snap judgment in how safe we think those people are. Okay. So that is one dimension of how we know how to act in certain social situations. So now on to another one is information. Okay. So there's a few different types of information we're going to talk about. There's firsthand and secondhand information. So firsthand information is information that comes to us directly, like we witnessed whatever happened, and so, or we experienced it, so we know exactly what happened. So some of the information we have about the world comes to us through direct experience. This is typically the most accurate because we ourselves saw it happen. Rest comes to us secondhand through gossip, mass media, biographies, textbooks, etc. So although firsthand information is typically more accurate, it's not always. So can you think of a time that a firsthand experience was deceptive or not totally accurate? And what comes to my mind whenever I think of this is growing up going to my grandma's house. I'm originally from the St. Louis area, and I moved away when I was almost 7. So my whole early childhood, I would go to my grandma's house all the time. We lived really close to her. She had a pool in the backyard, a big deck and a pool. Um, and I thought her house was great. I thought it was big. I thought that, she had a lot of money, but I just thought her house was something special. It was big. She had this huge pool. It was great. That was something that I experienced firsthand. I directly experienced it. But then as an older teenager, going back, back and forth after as we moved, and finally it clicked one day when I saw her pool, and it was just an above ground 4 foot deep pool, nothing big. It's just one of those big, one of those circular ones, not a huge pool. And her house is a normal 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, very, very normal house. So why did it seem so much bigger to me as a child than it did as a teenager or adult? And that's why I'm saying that the firsthand experiences can be inaccurate at times because of the way you perceive things, or maybe you don't see the full picture. Whatever it is, there are times that firsthand information is not accurate. Okay, secondhand information. So whenever you're thinking about historical figures, how do we know about those people? How do we know about George Washington? How do we know about Noah from Noah's Ark? How do we know about Alexander the Great? How do we know about these people? How do we know current events? How do we know what's going on in other countries? How do we know what's going on in our state capital? We're not there. How do we feel like we know people we have never met? How do you feel like you're friends with some of your friends' friends that you've never met? How do you feel like you know people you've never met? And that is from secondhand information, whether it's from the news, whether it's from books, whether it's from what other people have said. That is how we know about pretty much everything that we have not seen ourselves. That's how we know everything is from another source, which begs to ask the question, is our source accurate? What factors can reduce the reliability of secondhand information? How about bias? How about people wanting you to believe, someone lying, people wanting you to believe something? So we're going to get into those reasons, those ways that the reliability of secondhand information can be reduced. So the first is ideological distortions. This is when people who transmit information often have an ideological agenda, which is a desire to foster certain beliefs or behaviors that leads them to accentuate some elements of a story and suppress others. This is usually done in relative innocence. However, people often knowingly provide distorted accounts for the express purpose of misleading. For example, American politics. Maybe you see a debate going on and someone is saying something purposefully misleading to try to get you to think poorly about the other candidate or to think highly of them. Maybe the media, oh no, I won't talk about media yet. We'll get into that. But there are reasons that people want you to believe something, and so they will twist whatever information they have into seeming to make them seem in a better light. Okay, next is bad news bias. One of the most pervasive causes of distortion in secondhand accounts is the desire to entertain. We embellish stories to make them more interesting, dramatic, funny, etc. How, from saying that, how does 24/7 news play a role in this? News used to be a couple hours a day. you tuned in for the 7 o'clock news or the whatever o'clock news, and you would get caught up on the events of the day. But then 24/7 news outlets started happening, became a thing. And if they want to keep viewers up, they've got to produce entertaining, gripping stories 24/7. So if they need something that is newsworthy 24/7, then what are they going to feed you? They're going to feed you something interesting, dramatic, funny, even if the original story is not that interesting, dramatic, funny, intriguing, whatever, they're going to paint it out to be that way. So it's going to put a different um it's going to shed different light on that story that may not even be accurate, and they might distort it by the way they're trying to spin it to make you want to watch. Bad news bias can lead people to believe they're more at risk of victimization than they really are. They may say, they may because it's something that will keep people's attention. They may show robberies and murders that are happening all the time, and they sensationalize it, and they say you're at risk too because this keeps happening. But what they maybe the percentage of or number of robberies and murders have not risen, and in fact they may have actually dropped, but because they're constantly putting this on their news, it makes you feel like, well, gosh, I've got to do something. I've got to move. I've got to protect my, I'm not saying you shouldn't protect yourself, but I've got to do something because this is a problem that is getting worse because I'm seeing it on the news all the time. And that's what bad news bias is. So that being said, is fake news a real thing? Next, social media can magnify the impact of any fake or hyperbolic news story. Why do you think that is? Next, selective reporting of sources can have a big impact on the conclusions that a consumer is likely to reach. Ooh, absolutely. When reporters are whenever news outlets are selecting what they want to talk about and what they don't, or certain parts of an event that they want to highlight versus others, can definitely have a big impact on how the viewer has an opinion about that event. Okay, so now there can be issues in how we seek information, not necessarily in the information that we receive, but in how we seek it. And the first way is through confirmation bias. This is the tendency to test a proposition by searching for evidence that would support it. So say you have a belief, okay? Say you have a belief and you want to see if it's true. So all you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking for evidence that supports what you believe. Are you not? Rather than looking at information that both disproves and proves what you believe. So we have a tendency to seek confirming information that can lead to all sorts of false beliefs because we can find supporting evidence for almost anything. To truly test a proposition, we must seek out the evidence against it as well as the evidence for it so that we are well informed both ways and can make an educated decision. Okay, so now we're going to get into kind of the marketing side of things. So anyone that is a business major taking this class, this may help you. So the key to successful marketing is not just a selection of what information to present, but how to present it. And that brings us to the primacy and recency effect. And this is how you present information can change what people take away from it. Okay, so the primacy or primacy effect is the type of order effect that the disproportionate influence on judgment by information presented first in a body of evidence. So what you want someone to take away from what you're going to say, you have to have at the very beginning of what you're going to say, because that's what people are going to remember based off of the primacy effect. So let's say you are, let's say you're reading a one-page article, that maybe a two-page article, okay? A two full-page article over social psychology. Let's say you're reading that. And then afterwards, someone says, tell me about this study. Tell me about this article that you just read. Well, you're most likely to remember the first things that were said and the last things that were said. So that's what the recency effect is the last things that were said. This is a type of order effect, the disproportionate influence on judgment by information presented last in a body of evidence. So whatever you need to bring home, whatever you need to or to hit home, whatever you need to stick out, or whatever information you're using to influence the way that someone thinks, you need to make sure that it's either at the very beginning or at the very end of what you are saying or have written, because that is what people are most likely to remember. And then if they can remember it, it's more likely to change their opinion. Okay, so that was the recency and the primacy effect. Now, these are other ways how to present information to influence what someone thinks. Another way is the framing effect. This is the influence on judgment resulting from the way information is presented, such as the order of presentation or the wording. So you are going to frame things in a certain way to where you're going to say what's important first. That like framing effect is a type of primacy, or primacy effect and recency effect are a type of framing effect. So you're going to frame it in a certain way. I don't want you to confuse this with spin framing. And this is where you are putting a positive or negative spin on the information that you're giving to make people think a certain way. So this varies the content of what is presented. So if you're saying something one way, it can make people have a negative reaction to it. But if you say it a different way, the same information, someone could have a positive reaction to it. So, for example, if someone said illegal aliens versus undocumented workers, which one has a more positive connotation and which one has a more negative connotation? I would say that illegal aliens has a more negative and undocumented workers has a more positive. It's you're talking about the same group of people typically, but they have two way different connotations, which will make people think about what you're saying differently. And that's what spin framing is. Okay. And then lastly is positive and negative framing. For example, I came up with this example back in the fall of 2020 when COVID was all people talked about. So COVID-19 vaccine is 95% effective, rather than saying the COVID-19 vaccine is 5% non-effective. Because negative information tends to attract more attention and have greater psychological impact than positive information, information framed in negative terms tends to elicit a stronger response. Okay, that is the end of chapter 4.